In healthcare's technological revolution, the balance between innovation and patient-centered care has never been more critical. Our next guest, Dr. Craig Norquist, brings an extraordinary perspective as CMIO of Honor Health, drawing from his unique journey from Navy nuclear operator to emergency physician. While together, Craig shares his vision for technology that enhances rather than compromises the sacred provider-patient relationship and how this approach is transforming care delivery. With dual board certifications in emergency medicine and clinical informatics, Craig champions high reliability principles learned in both nuclear power plants and hospital settings. As a 19-time Ironman triathlete and cancer survivor, his patient experience profoundly shapes his approach to healthcare technology. Join us to explore how Dr. Norquist is leveraging informatics to reduce provider burden, improve safety, and create a learning health system that truly puts patients first. Let's go.
Welcome to Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli, where we highlight and speak with the innovators, the game changers, and the pioneers who are deeply passionate and relentless in solving the problems our world is facing today. This is your opportunity to connect with and learn from these leaders and to support them on their mission. Perhaps they will soon be hearing your story as well. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you on this journey with us. Hi, Dr. Norquist. A big welcome to our podcast today.
Mike, I'm so excited to be here and chat with you about healthcare and technology.
Well, given your interest and expertise in process quality and outcome improvement, as well as improving the patient and provider experience with information technology and healthcare, especially during this fast-moving moment of technological advancement, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. But before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. While listening to any of our episodes, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast. You will automatically receive episode updates in your podcast player. Simply search Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And lastly, please visit the bottom of the episode notes to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter in order to further the conversations occurring on this podcast. All right, Craig, it's almost time for our community to learn how you are using technology to facilitate the improvement of patient care and safety at Honor Health and beyond. But first, what's that one piece of advice that you would give to others who are passionate about reimagining the health of our world?
Yeah, as you and your listeners probably are aware, healthcare is complicated and complex, and it's really easy to get frustrated and become cynical and give up. I would urge everybody to not do that and to not take no for an answer, but then also to listen to the people who are coming to you with their issues, because everybody has something that you might be able to help solve if you just sit down and listen to them and not assume that you have a solution. And technology sometimes isn't the solution.
No, Craig, you're absolutely spot on. Sometimes technology, or, we think about technology being maybe a piece of software, if you will, but that sometimes is not the answer whatsoever. Sometimes going back to a traditional analog environment, whatever that might be, or just going back to something else that maybe worked in the past can be a solution as well. But Craig, coming back to today, I teed it up on the front end. We are going through some great technological advancement. We've heard just over the past couple of weeks, some big AI advancements around DeepSeek and others. And, lots of things coming at us on our own personal lives. And then, of course, coming at healthcare as well. Craig, is this now more than important than ever to ensure that you have those right stakeholders around the table? Make sure you're listening. Because one thing I'm also seeing, Craig, is we're starting to see a lot of folks come that haven't been traditionally in healthcare their entire careers come to the healthcare industry. I personally raise my hand and say, welcome, come on in, because I think we need kind of new, fresh minds. But how important is it to make sure that we do have those stakeholders around the table, whether it be external or internal, say to a Honor Health or beyond? How important has that been with your journey?
Yeah, it's crucial, because I think if you just try to change a system from within without thinking differently, without taking recommendations or suggestions from outside on how you might be able to do something better or different, you're just going to continue to feel like you're on that hamster wheel. You're always going to find issues that pop up that are possibly just related to the way that we've always done things. And sometimes a new technology might even exacerbate that and make it worse. It's going to amplify some of those bad results. And so taking advice from somebody in a different industry or taking advice from somebody who's looking at it from the outside in is very important for us so that we can make sure that we're doing the best that we can. It sounds weird, but to sometimes insulate our providers from this overwhelming onslaught of technological solutions. Some of them are actually solutions. Some of them are not as good of a solution. It's a technology looking for a solution. And we just don't have the bandwidth in healthcare to be trying out things while also trying to take care of patients.
No, it's a great call. And it's a very, very delicate position, especially for leaders like yourself that you are in. And you said it so elegantly, making sure that we also, at times insulate our providers so they can continue to make sure that they're focused on what matters most, that provider-patient interaction. As well as I do, there is no piece of technology that could ever replace that very intimate role that is within healthcare, makes that provider and patient interaction so sacred and so special. So Craig, thank you for that, for really teeing up of how we should be thinking about where we need to be right now during this great massive change that we're not only experiencing in our personal lives, but of course in healthcare as well. And I know we have a lot to discuss. You have one heck of a storied background. I can't wait to discuss that and more, and how you're viewing the industry, and not only today, but where you see things heading for tomorrow as well. We're going to get after all of that and more after we get back from thanking our community champion sponsor.
Healthcare faces a paradox that echoes through generations. While the current practices that help heal patients today are vital, it is crucial to evaluate them through an environmental lens. OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative is a collection of interviews featuring influential thought leaders and industry experts like you, who share their sustainability strategies, insights, and provide valuable perspectives from diverse industries to inspire innovation within the healthcare sector. OSHA invites you to join this journey. Want to share your sustainability story? OSHA is actively looking for partners to highlight the important and inspiring work being done around the globe. Check out OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative and series at OSHA.com. That's OSSUR.com. Or visit the episode notes and click on their link. Together, and with OSHA helping lead the way, let's all be responsible for tomorrow.
All right, we are back with Dr. Craig Norquist, CMIO at Honor Health. Craig, such a pleasure to have you here today. What a story, what a background that you have, and now being in that position of CMIO at Honor Health, and especially during these times to be a CMIO at a major health system like Honor Health. As you said, we both talked about on the front end, we are in a midst of great technological change and advancement, some good, some bad. As you mentioned, there are a lot of solutions. It's information overload out there right now. But we have a lot to discuss, not only kind of your storied history of leading up to today of you being a CMIO, everything from an incredible Ironman athlete to battling cancer and beyond, and all the things personally that led you up to your role and how you think about the CMIO role in healthcare. Lots to discuss there. And then, of course, Craig, we need to look a little future state. We're going to pull the crystal ball off the shelf, discuss what are you and the team seeing down the road, next few years that we need to be mindful of as listeners to the podcast here. And what are you seeing that we should be really focused on in those coming years? And then, of course, we can't let you go until we get an opportunity to be able to be of help to you and your team. But, of course, Craig, let's go there first. Give us a little bit of background and journey. How does one become from serving in our military up to being a CMIO at Honor Health? Give us a little bit of that background.
Thanks very much. It actually has been kind of a circuitous route in that right out of high school, even while in high school, I enlisted in the military. As much as I wanted to go to college, I was the youngest of four boys. None of my brothers went to college. It kind of felt like that was what you did. You entered the military. So I entered the Navy and I became an electrician, nuclear power plant operator. Ultimately got stationed on the USS Enterprise, which is a real ship. It's now decommissioned and they're building the newest aircraft carrier, which will be CVN-80, which is another Enterprise. And there, unbeknownst to me, I was in a high reliability organization and one of the most dangerous environments that's known to man, both a nuclear power plant as well as a flight deck of an aircraft carrier. Even though I wasn't on the flight deck personally, I was able to witness flight operations and just see the complexity and the choreography, I guess, for lack of a better word, of how that actually works. And understanding that each person has their own role and they are responsible to do that role and not try to do somebody else's. And that's how you make things work. And I was a 17 and 18-year-old kid and I was operating a power plant, but I had levels of seniority above me that made sure that I was staying in my lane, doing what I was trained to do and doing it at the highest ability that I could. From there, then I entered college, unsure of what I wanted to be. I thought I was going to be a nutritionist. Sports nutrition wasn't even a thing way back in those years. And then ultimately I decided to go to medical school. So I became a pre-med and ultimately matriculated into Harvard Med School, where I met some incredible people. was able to learn my way around how to behave in groups of people who are, I'll admit, a lot of them were a lot smarter than me, but then a lot of them weren't able maybe to communicate as well as I could. And so we had to kind of balance those, and I learned how to do that. And I chose emergency medicine from that because I wanted to be the person who knew enough about everything, where if somebody asked me a question, I would at least be able to give them a satisfying answer and move on from there. And then I've learned an incredible amount through my training in emergency medicine at a county hospital here in Arizona, and ultimately then joined an emergency medicine group in Scottsdale, which was at the time at Scottsdale Healthcare, and then ultimately merged into what's now known as Honor Health. After about 15 years of working in the emergency department, I was department chair for a couple of different departments. I became chief of staff for one of the hospitals, and then ultimately somebody asked me to become a patient safety officer. And that's when I realized, hey, that high reliability stuff that I learned and lived in the military really played that part. And it just seemed to be a natural fit for me personally to do that. And I was the first patient safety officer for our organization. So we needed to really come up to speed significantly. And around the same time, I'd been interested in technology, never was a programmer. And I think that's a misconception a lot of people have, is that you need to program so that you can become an IT person in healthcare. No, you need to know how to use programs, just like in every other stage of life. But I got interested in that and ultimately took the boards in informatics and became a board certified clinical informatics specialist. And around the same time, our current CMIO needed some help. And then unfortunately, she had cancer herself and needed to step down. And so they asked me to take that role, and I moved over and to become the CMIO, still keeping that patient safety and quality improvement kind of mentality, because I think it's just crucial that those things go hand in hand, and we need to just continue to push that. And then being one of the few board certified informatics specialists at Honor Health, our academic affairs officer decided she wanted to have a fellowship, and so she made me fellowship director. So wearing a couple different hats, but it's what keeps me interested and it keeps life interesting, I suppose.
What a fascinating background. I could turn this into a podcast interview just on the entire part of operating a power plant on an entire fleet of boats in our military. I can't even imagine what that must have been like. And like you mentioned, the things that you learned at age 17, 18, 19 are still playing out today. Absolutely fascinating. Craig, let's also talk about now today and Honor Health. You've been there now in that CMIO role coming up on almost 6 years. So that's a considerable amount of time as being the CMIO at Honor Health. Let's first go there for our listeners that may not be familiar with the kind of greater Arizona area. Who is Honor Health and kind of the communities that you do serve? Let's start there, and then we'll dive into some more specifics.
So as I mentioned, Honor Health used to be two different community-based organizations in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. So it's Scottsdale Healthcare and the John C. Lincoln Health Network. We merged in 2016 while I was chief of staff of one of the Scottsdale hospitals, and we then ultimately became Honor Health. And so we have those 6 hospitals, and just more recently, we've accumulated 3 more hospitals from the unfortunate business with Steward Healthcare. And so we're now getting our last hospital online on Epic just today, by the way. So we serve the greater Scottsdale, Phoenix area, and we also have over 100 primary care and specialty clinics. So we're still one of the few, if not only, community-based healthcare nonprofit organizations serving the Phoenix area. Major competitors in the area are Banner Healthcare and Dignity. I'd like to think that we all work well together in literally the sandbox that is Phoenix, because we've got a lot of people here. It's a growing community, and we all kind of help each other out. And that was really played out well during the pandemic when we needed to rely on each other to load balance our ICU patients. And I think we demonstrated just that cooperative nature of healthcare that hopefully we can continue to see more of.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. What incredible times that was to be able to see, leading health systems in, major areas like a Phoenix coming together to really help pull our communities forward. It was very commendable to see so many of our healthcare leaders doing exactly that. There's nothing wrong with a competition, if you will,
right,
that we've seen across the nation many times. So thank you for sharing that and setting the stage a bit. Craig, I have a couple of pointed questions for you. Given a little bit of that history that you just mentioned, and of course, what you are working on today, you mentioned earlier that you both have served as a patient safety officer and now as a CMIO. You obviously have a unique perspective on health IT safety. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities in creating technology solutions that enhance rather than compromise patient safety?
Yeah, that's such an important question. That's such an important issue that I'll be honest, I don't have the answer, but there are so many things that we need to be aware of. Those things that we put in front of our nurses, our doctors, our pharmacists that are meant to help, but become frustrating, that become a burden. We need to definitely listen to them when they say, I don't need you to tell me that my patient might have sepsis. That's why I ordered those particular medications and those particular tests. And so for an alert to pop up and say, hey, your patient might have sepsis because you ordered a lactic acid on them, we need to make sure that we're not doing that to them. And there are a lot of things like that that happen, not because anyone is ill-intentioned. It's just that they don't understand that workflow, right? And so I think that more than anything is where the role of a CMIO, where the role of an informatician in medicine can really step in and say, I understand what you want to do. I know you want the best for patients. But if we continue to have our nurses and our doctors have to see these alerts, after a while, they start to ignore them. And then sometimes they'll just become completely meaningless. And so we need to work continuously to refresh and build that trust with our providers and those things that we put in front of them, and work with them on what is it that you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? And understanding that I don't think anybody ever wants to see an alert, but those alerts need to be present when there is a situation that could potentially compromise a patient's safety or health.
Well, and let's talk about those patients and the safety and health of them. And Craig, is someone who has completed 19 Ironman races. Yes, 19 Ironman races, the Grand Slam of ultra running, and you overcame non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. How has being a patient and endurance athlete influenced your perspective on healthcare delivery and provider wellness?
Yeah, I think it's really helped to shape me both as a person, as well as a physician, and as well as a CMIO. It's almost cliche. It's not a 100-meter race. It's a marathon. It's even beyond that, right? It's a perpetual thing. You just need to not get out of the gate too fast, think that you have all the answers and implement too many things and not be able to really measure their impact. You also need to recognize sometimes when you're training and doing something, if you're not doing it well, there's no point in continuing to do that unwell. And swimming would be that thing for me in Ironman training. You've got to swim a lot. I don't like swimming. I'm not a natural swimmer, but it made me recognize that small tweaks in my form and style made a significant difference in the water. And then I took that into the bike and into running, and then you then apply that to life. You might think that what you're doing is exactly what you need to be doing, and you don't want to listen to anybody's criticism of it. But sometimes you just have to lift your head up and stop and listen and say, oh, yeah, that might actually be a better way to do that. So that's kind of more the training thing. You know, I've had lymphoma now for 13 years, and I had a very slow growing lymphoma called follicular non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it transformed into what's called a diffuse large B cell, which was more aggressive. Within 2 to 3 weeks, I had some masses which were wreaking havoc, and I wasn't feeling very good. So I had to undergo chemotherapy. And through that entire journey, even pre-chemotherapy, it really made me recognize that we don't know everything that's going on with our patients. And for us to assume that is folly, right? So somebody comes in and I discovered my lymphoma because I had a lump on my arm. And being an emergency physician, if somebody came in and said, I have a lump on my arm, it is so easy to roll your eyes and sigh and say, this is not where you should be. Sure, there should be better places for those people to go. But if he or she trusts me as a doctor to figure out what that lump on their arm and how I could either put them at ease or get them started on a journey to figure out what that is and get it taken care of, I should be honored to do that. And going through that made me realize that no matter the complaint, I need to take it seriously and I need to look for what else might be going on. And then unfortunately, once my cancer transformed and I needed to have chemotherapy, that was yet another journey that you wish on no one. But having gone through it, it really made me understand the importance of being fit, not so that you can complete an Ironman in record time, not that so that you look good in a swimsuit, but so that you could survive something like aggressive chemotherapy and maybe not necessarily thrive, but get through it and be able to kind of come out the other end and be improved. And then just some other interesting things that happened on that journey. As anyone who's ever been in a healthcare setting, there's maybe an implied privacy. So you sometimes hear things from other patient rooms that you should not hear. And I heard patients having to negotiate with their employers and their insurance companies to get their next round of chemotherapy approved or to have time off from work. And that right there was the thing that makes me want to come back to work each day. We have a system that has the potential to be incredible. We do incredible, miraculous things in medicine, but yet we also have people who are unable to get not even the simplest care, sometimes a more complicated care. And it just needs to be easier for everybody. And being in the family in medicine, so to speak, I was given certain privileges where, I got maybe to the front of the line to my oncologist and such. And I felt kind of bad doing that, right? I felt guilty that I was kind of jumping a queue. Sure, it's a benefit and I'm going to take advantage of that benefit being in the family, but it needs to be easier for everybody. And I think we have a lot of work that we can and should and hopefully will start to do so that people have access to that kind of care that they need and don't have to compromise so much to be able to get the care they need.
Well, let's talk about that patient care. I think you hit on something incredibly important right there, Craig, that I want to double click into a bit. And thank you so much for sharing such a personal and powerful story. It is very much appreciated. But in regards to that patient care, making sure that we get back to it and making sure that all of us that touch this industry, from technology entrepreneurs like myself to executive leaders like yourself to providers on the front line or others, when we start thinking about this term patient-centered care, what exactly does that mean in regards to what you're seeing on the daily? We mentioned it earlier, and specifically around this kind of being inundated with new innovation or new technologies. And sometimes we need to insulate our providers so they can stay in that sacred moment with that patient care, if you will. Craig, what are maybe 2 or 3 or 3 to 5 items or initiatives or technologies or advancements that you're seeing right now that can get all of us back to really putting patient-centered care at the center of everything that we do, similar to what you kind of just mentioned on your own patient journey? What are some of those things that have you excited right now that you're seeing that are developing in real time?
So there's things that have been in development for a long time and are now starting to be more widespread and utilized a lot more and more effectively, like telemedicine or virtual care or even asynchronous care. We remember the day where in order for you to get treated by your physician or even ask a question, you had to make an appointment and you had to go in there and you had to wait your hour, get into the office and then ask the question. Now you can communicate with your provider or you can set up a televisit so that you can actually talk about what you need, not having to take time out of work so that you could do that, right? So we're widening our ability for people to access care. And that to me is crucial. We just don't have enough healthcare providers in many areas of our country, if even just our country, so to speak, right? So we need to have a wider access so that people can get the care that they need. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be lower quality care, nor should it, right? We shouldn't have to settle for you to see somebody who doesn't have the skill set that is necessary for you to get the care that you need. We just need to make sure that those people can get the care of somebody and that person then isn't completely inconvenient. So if you're a specialist in the area, you don't want to have somebody drive 500 miles to come and see you. Why wouldn't you just get on a phone, get on a computer, Zoom call and talk to them about it? Obviously, you have to be cognizant of the security and the information security and HIPAA compliance, but there's so many different platforms and modalities now that we could leverage to do that. The other thing, though, I think we talk about things that maybe have been around for a lot or discussed a long time is what's called a learning health system, where we take the output of what we're doing. If somebody comes in and they have a complaint of abdominal pain and the exam is this and a blood count is that, and it ends up being appendicitis, it's a very basic, so to speak, example. But why don't we just continue to do more of that and make our processes more in line with that? Instead of, okay, somebody has pain in this side, so we need to get both a CT and an ultrasound. Well, the ultrasound didn't help. So stop at the CT and do that. So taking the outputs that you get, if somebody is getting a better treatment based on whatever their background is and their comorbidities, if their blood pressure responds better to a combination of medications, if you have other patients who have that same combination of health conditions, then try them on that same combination of medications. And so I think now more than ever, we have that ability. We've got the technology and we've got the data. I remember the days where we used to talk about big data, and that used to be that you'd had enough patients. Well, now we have enough big data within one hospital that we can power some of these algorithms and start to make more sense and do better treatment pathways for our patients. And then we could also this is maybe going on a limb, start to listen to our patients in a different way, right? In the ED, in the days of Google, what was the common saying is, don't think that your Google search is the same as my MD. But, honestly, a lot of patients know an awful lot about the thing that's bothering them or the disease that they have. Sometimes they may know more than a physician if they've got a particular disease that's very uncommon. And so allowing the patient to participate in their care is going to be a lot more possible now more than ever. And then hopefully with that too, we can, and this may sound weird, we might be able to share in some of that burden that our docs have, right? Our primary care doctors are held to so many different things they have to do, closing care gaps and getting annual blood tests and quarterly checkups and different things. A computer can do that, and it's tireless in doing that. And there's no reason for a human being to have to be able to do that, or a team of human beings. Put so much of that stuff off onto a computer and let it do it. So we've got a lot of possibility that we just need to continue to drive that way.
Yeah, Craig, and that is all in front of us right now. And you mentioned it just a moment ago in your comments that we are very overburdened in regards to what we're asking of each of our clinicians, because we also just don't have enough in the pipeline that are coming into the industry, as well as the ones that are leaving. I mean, these are very, very difficult times in regards to the number of workers in our industry, or lack thereof, if you will. But being able to leverage the machines, allow the computers to take some of that workload, offload it. So again, as we keep mentioning in this podcast, get back to that kind of patient-centered care and that focus between the provider and the patient. So some very, very powerful examples of doing exactly that and meeting the patient where they want to be as well, Craig. I mean, these are the new realities of healthcare, and we have to pay attention to it, whether people like it or not. Because I know one of the things that we are continually stuck in sometimes in healthcare is that ugly two words slammed together called status quo. Sometimes we are too much married to that, but these are changing times, and we must be able to answer the call, because at the end of the day, we need to be thinking about putting the patient at the center of all that we do. Craig, let's also look a little future state. Let's grab the crystal ball off the proverbial shelf over here. You mentioned some things that we can be doing today. Let's also talk about tomorrow. What changes in healthcare delivery do you predict will have the biggest impact in the next 5 to 10 years? That can include technological advancements or otherwise. What are some of those things that you're seeing in healthcare delivery that you're going to think that are going to predict some of the biggest impact they'll have on us in the coming years?
Yeah, one thing I'm really hopeful for and looking forward to getting started on working on here at Honor Health, and with a new collaboration we have with ASU, Arizona State University, that is using large language models to look at the data that we have or the information that we have. And I said before that now we used to talk about big data being millions or tens of millions of patients. Now you could almost consider one individual's electronic health record big data. There's so much in there. It takes so long for a provider to sift through all the different tabs and different areas and PDFs sometimes that are useless, buried somewhere, in order to get any useful information out. Well, we can leverage that same technology that can help high school students write an essay to find all of the important facts in somebody's chart and summarize them in bullet points and direct them to the right place in the chart to actually associate lab changes, medication changes, and such. And I think now more than ever, we'll have an ability to do that, and it could be specialty dependent. So as an emergency physician, I look at a chart differently than an ear, nose, and throat doctor does, than an endocrinologist does, or a surgeon does. And I think we can prompt engineer, based on specialty, a way to look at a patient's chart and get them the important nuggets of information so that they can get to the point and get what's really important for that patient. So any less time that a provider has to take looking through charts, hopefully then will be translated into more time listening to what's really affecting or what's bothering that patient. Not just focused on, okay, you have diabetes, we have to make sure we close all these care gaps, but how are you doing, right? Talk to me about your family. Those reasons, like so many of us went into medicine, is so that we can actually build those kind of relationships with people and have them trust us. They trust you based on those relationships, and they also trust you based on the decisions you make. So we can empower people to do more of the right stuff.
Absolutely. And that kind of future state crystal ball vision, that's coming at us faster than ever. And a lot of great advancements happening and coming to our healthcare industry near you, if you will, in regards to a lot of places around the country are really starting to lean in on this, which is great because we need to be able to your point, we need to be able to get our providers back to that again, as we continue to talk about in this podcast interview, back to that patient-provider interactions. It's so sacred. Craig, let's also put the crystal ball back on the shelf for now. Let's get back to current state. Always love to be able to help our guests out like yourself. What's one problem, need, or question that you or Honor Health has that we could be helping you with?
Yeah, I think it's part of the role as a fellowship director in informatics as well as a CMIO is trying to get people to understand what it is we do. Informatics is one of the newest specialties in medicine, and I feel like there are days where I spend 50 to 80% of my time explaining what an informatics specialty is. And once I've explained it, people are like, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. And also being an emergency physician, I can envision that it was very similar in the 60s and 70s. Hospital emergency departments were staffed with whoever the doctor was who got tapped to be down in the ED. One day it could be a dermatologist, the next day it could be a cardiologist, or it could be an anesthesiologist. And if you came in with a particular complaint, you're kind of hoping that that doctor knew enough about it to care for you. And so from that, a specialty of emergency medicine was formed where we know enough about each thing to know who's well enough to go home and who needs to have more immediate care. And I see a very similar process in informatics that needs to happen, and we're at the forefront of doing that. And so I would just ask people to look into informatics and to look and maybe appreciate the work that we do, right? A lot of these quality measures that hospitals and clinics and physicians and nurses all have to report out are things that in some places are done by somebody who has Excel skills. And then somewhere else, it's done by a team of professionals. And fortunately, we're with a team of professionals in our quality and safety department where they abstract data and we look at data and we can visualize it and make important changes and then report that out. And that's really what that informatician can help with is let's make those processes easier on both ends. And so if a physician has particular things that they're expected to do, say a medication reconciliation, we don't want to just say, you have to do this because it's a mandate. We want to make it as inherently easy as possible for them to do what's right for the patient and not continue to add more to them. And so if people could look and see what informatics is and start to appreciate it as a specialty and help us maybe market ourselves in a different light and a better light, it would be tremendously helpful.
Oh, I absolutely love this. And for our community that wants to engage in this conversation and learn more about the world of informatics, Craig, how do they get a hold of you? Social media handles, websites, or otherwise? How do they track you down online?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I used to be on Twitter or X, but I've since resigned from that. But yeah, LinkedIn is just my name, Craig Norquist. You could also email me at Honor Health. It's C Norquist. That's Norquist at honorhealth.com. Yeah, and I'm out and about and trying to do the work to try to help push healthcare in the direction that's improved because unfortunately I needed it a couple of years ago and I'm going to need it again as I get older, and you need to make sure that you continue to move it in the right direction.
Love it. And for our listening community, just simply scroll on down in the podcast player that you're listening to this episode. There will be those contact points for Craig down in the episode notes. Of course, you can head over to our free global online community at passionatepioneers.com. There will be a post for Craig's episode with some contact points that he listed out in that post as well. Again, over at passionatepioneers.com. Well, Craig, what a fascinating conversation, an energizing one, and so much to think about and consider as we go through some major transformation and innovation in healthcare. From my perspective, much needed and much welcome. So thank you for spending time to discuss all that. But of course, before we let you go, we have one more piece for you. It's a fill in the blank. I'm a passionate pioneer because...
Mike, I'm a passionate pioneer because I feel like we are capable of doing so much more in life and in healthcare. And we just need to continue to remind people that they're awesome and that you're not defined by your worst or most average moment, but just continue to try to do better.
Absolutely love it. Way to bring it all together at the end of this podcast. Craig, thank you so much for taking time to be with our community, to share your story and where you're seeing things heading that we need to continue to be mindful of. And of course, all the wonderful things happening in your and Honor Health's camp. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with our community. We are so appreciative of you joining us today. Again, Craig, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for joining us today on Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. We'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast so we can continue to improve this community and to further support the pioneers being featured. Lastly, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and invite your friends and colleagues to join us. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you back with us during our next episode.